Mosaic, a daily news program from Worldlink TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
Welcome to the News in Brief from Abu Dhabi TV. A Palestinian man was martyred by Israeli gunfire near Nablus, north of the West Bank. The Palestinian resistance movement, Hamas, condemns the assassination of Iyad al-Baik, one of the leaders of the Izz ad-Din Qassam brigades. He was killed when his car was hit with a missile in Gaza. Now, to our correspondent, Hazem Badar.
Yes, in light of their escalation policies toward the Palestinians, Israeli Apache helicopters bombed a civilian car with Iyad al-Baik in it. Al-Baik was one of the leaders of the Izz ad-Din Qassam brigades, Hamas military wing. He was accompanied by martyr Sheikh Salah Shehada, who was also wanted by the Israeli army for a long time. While in Gaza, the Israeli Apache helicopters shelled his car with 4 missiles.
Israel's Labour Party may elect Israel's former Prime Minister Shimon Peres as an interim party leader until they hold the primary elections in March of next year. Now, to our correspondent in Jerusalem, Leila Ouda.
The internal party reforms in Israel, Imran Mitzna's resignation, and the possibility that Shimon Peres will replace him. Where will this lead? Is there a possibility that the Labour Party can work under Ariel Sharon's right-wing extremist government? And what does all this mean?
The United States asked the Security Council to convene Friday morning to present a draft resolution to lift the sanctions on Iraq. The U.S. top advisor in the Iraqi Ministry of Justice announces that they established a special judicial court within the framework of the Iraqi justice system to review the crimes committed against Iraqis. This is the end of the News in Brief. Just a while ago, a Palestinian detonated himself near an Israeli checkpoint in Deir al-Balah, in the center of the Gaza Strip. Israeli military sources reported that a car exploded near an Israeli military vehicle near the settlement of Kfar Darun in the center of the Gaza Strip. There were no injuries reported. The new operation came only hours after Israel assassinated a Hamas leader in Gaza. Hamas considers the assassination a crime and Israel's way of implementing the roadmap. Hamas also released a statement saying that a roadmap that is built on the blood and bodies of the martyrs will not succeed. Iyad al-Baik, a member of al-Qassam brigades, was martyred when his car was shelled by Israeli Apache helicopters in Gaza.
Some of them are condemning the roadmap, and others are demanding retaliation. These are the voices of hundreds of angry Palestinians. After an assassination operation, which targeted a member of Al-Qassam brigades, Hamas's military wing, Israeli Apache helicopters shelled the car of 28-year-old Iyad al-Baik. The car was charred, and his body was burnt and torn apart.
I heard the sound of an explosion, and the glass shattered. Everything fell from the shelves, and the doors flew off their hinges. I didn't know. I thought they were bombing the house behind us or the factory itself. So I went out through the front door. When I came out, I saw another missile being fired, immediately after the first one. We went to the back, but after a few seconds, the third missile was fired.
I swear, nothing will work. Road or no road, road or no road. It's all lies. There is no peace. No peace. Hamas said that the assassination was a crime and perceived it as a clear message to all Palestinians. There is no other option except to resist, adding that what is happening on the ground is a product of the roadmap.
This operation is a true and honest implementation of the roadmap. The roadmap means one thing only: killing the Palestinians and protecting the Jews.
Meanwhile, the Palestinians held a funeral procession for a number of martyrs who were killed recently. Among the martyrs is 1.5-year-old Elian El-Basheti, who was killed by an Israeli bullet in the head in an Nimsawi district in Khan Yunis. Israel continues to assassinate Palestinian militia, and this affirms the Palestinian opposition's rejection to the roadmap plan. This also means that the Israeli government is trying to put down any efforts to bring the Palestinians and Israelis to the negotiating table. Azam Badaro, Abu Dhabi Television, Gaza.
Ahead of Saturday's visit by U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell, Israel and the Palestinian Authority were fine-tuning their positions Thursday, with each preparing to urge Washington to pressure the other over the so-called roadmap to Middle East peace. But in reality, U.S. pressure will be exerted on the Palestinians to end their intifada, while Israeli Premier Ariel Sharon's government maintains a strong opposition to the implementation of the roadmap. And reports show that Bush's administration is not willing to impose the roadmap on the Israelis.
Security will be the sole focus of talks to be held by U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell during his visit to occupied Palestine on Saturday. This was made clear in media reports and official statements issued in both the United States and Israel. Also, many of those accompanying Powell in his tour are CIA members, in addition to the deputy of the Undersecretary of State to the Middle East, David Satterfield. U.S. State Department spokesman Richard Boucher demanded that the Palestinians carry out more security measures to crack down on resistance groups. This was stressed by the Israeli radio correspondent for political affairs, Shimon Aran, who further said that all talks and meetings will mainly deal with security issues, what gives a clear evidence that the concealed intention, in fact, is to impede the roadmap.
What we are hearing nowadays in Sharon's cabinet does not embody the spirit of the roadmap. If we clashed with preconditions, we'll stop by them.
I don't believe that our activity in impeding the roadmap weakens Sharon. It rather strengthens him, because he can make clear to the Americans, to the Europeans, and to the world that is facing problems at home to make way for a political agreement.
No pressure is exerted on the Israeli side, in contrast to heavy pressure on the Palestinians under Israeli occupation. Israeli ambassador to the U.S., Danny Ayalon, said that the U.S. administration deeply understands the Israeli needs and that Powell does not intend to exert pressure on Israel as far as the roadmap is concerned. A report issued in the Israeli daily Haaretz even doubted the extent to which the U.S. is determined to implement the roadmap.
The central problem in this administration is that President Bush is surrounded with persons such as Wolfowitz, who directs the U.S. foreign policy. Their view is considered more extremist than Bush's view. They are not convinced in reaching an agreement with the Palestinians, while they believe they must strengthen Israel to fight the Palestinians. They also believe that all the land of Israel is important to them, so Bush's administration will not exert pressure on Sharon's cabinet.
As a prelude to Powell's stop in the region, several Israeli-Palestinian meetings are expected to take place, on top of which is a meeting between Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon and Palestinian Premier Mahmoud Abbas Abu Mazen. However, Israeli media sources were skeptical about the results of these meetings, especially that Israel still insists on annulling the right of Palestinian refugees to return before giving in any concessions.
In Lebanon, Hezbollah Secretary General Said Hassan Nasrallah said U.S. pressure is very serious, but that would not push the party to give up resistance. Said Nasrallah hailed Lebanon's stance on the resistance that was conveyed to U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell during his visit to Lebanon last week. And he welcomed the visit of Iranian President Said Mohammad Khatami to Lebanon next week.
Hezbollah Secretary General Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah expected that U.S. pressures on Lebanon and Syria would mount up. However, he ruled out essential changes in the stances of these two countries. He further stressed that Hezbollah would stick to its choice of resistance because the reasons behind this choice are still valid. In an interview with the Lebanese daily As-Safir, Sayyid Nasrallah said the Americans are forcefully moving towards a settlement in the region, and they are now adjusting more in their procedures than in the past. Sayyid Nasrallah said that what happened in Iraq imposed several changes, but that does not necessarily mean that the broad lines which affect events in the region have changed. He said, quote, Israel is still occupying Arab territories, and consequently, resistance against this occupation will continue, and there is nothing that calls to ending it in Lebanon and Palestine. Hezbollah Secretary General denied there being any official pressure, whether Lebanese or Syrian, on Hezbollah to take any steps pursuant to U.S. demands. Sayyid Nasrallah hailed the Lebanese official stances conveyed to U.S. Secretary of State Colin Powell as far as the resistance is concerned, pointing out at the same time that calls to deploy the Lebanese army in the south are not realistic because the army is already there, and if they want to disarm the resistance, this is not valid to anyone in Lebanon and Syria. On another level, Sayyid Nasrallah hinted to the importance of the expected visit to Lebanon by Iranian President Sayyid Mohammad Khatami. He pointed out that the timing of the visit is very significant, noticeably that Iran backs Lebanon and Syria against the continuous U.S. and Israeli threats.
Meanwhile, Iraqi leaders and U.S. officials were to hold a new meeting in Baghdad on Thursday as a self-imposed deadline looms to forge a post-war interim government in Baghdad within the next few weeks. 2 new seats were expected to be added later the same day to the Council of Five, a core group of leaders tapped by the U.S. to oversee the birth of a U.S.-backed interim government after the fall of Saddam Hussein. The Council is leading the political horse trading ahead of a national Congress due to begin by the end of May that will form a government and fill the political void that many Iraqis blame for the post-war chaos. This report has more.
The month after occupied forces invaded Baghdad, a wide range of very local groups jostled for freedom, while others jostled for power amid the political vacuum. Washington has made clear that its old friends will be in charge of the country, and despite the fact that political life is slowly flourishing in Iraq according to the invaders, it's a tough mission for Iraqis to learn the U.S. democracy, and it may take more than a dozen killings by the U.S. troops to do it. In Fallujah, the central county has epitomized the U.S. democracy and Iraqi resistance. U.S. soldiers last week shot dead at least 16 people in still unclear circumstances during street rallies against their presence. The bloodshed fueled rage at what most still see as a foreign and morally corrupt occupation of their deeply Islamic conservative city. It also led local leaders, who are mostly religious and tribal chiefs, to find a political solution among themselves, appointing representatives to deal with the U.S. troops. In holy cities like Najaf and Karbala, U.S. soldiers have kept well away from the town proper, staying on outskirts and only occasionally popping into talks to local leaders. In Baghdad, the occupied forces are more engaged with former city officials, while hundreds of doctors and nurses took to the city streets on Wednesday to protest against living conditions, pay, and the U.S. appointment of the former Iraqi Vice Minister for Health, Ali Shanan, as the head of the health for the interim administration. For his part, the Iraqi opposition leader Adnan Pashashi has told reporters in Baghdad the Iraqi people alone should decide who will represent them in the future government, and that the opposition would not accept any American or international interference in forming the new Iraqi government. Pashashi, a former Iraqi foreign minister, was speaking upon his return from Dubai, where he spent over 2 decades in exile.
In Iraq's second city of Basra, the World Health Organization has reported a cholera outbreak. 17 cases have already been registered in 2 hospitals in the southern Iraqi city. Doctors say there could be dozens more due to contaminated water supplies and poor sanitation. But Al Tahrir Teaching Hospital did not have the means to treat them properly. The World Health Organization said in a statement that sewage is not being disposed of. Garbage collection is happening intermittently or not at all, and people are using water from the polluted Shatt al-Arab River. Iraq's water supply systems were damaged by US-led airstrikes, ground assaults and looting during and after the war.
ومن فلسطين إلى العراق President Bush declared that he has appointed Paul Bremer as an American envoy to Iraq after meeting with Defense Minister Donald Rumsfeld. Bush said that Bremer has accepted the position. The United States works hard to create order in Iraq after chaos has spread in the country in the wake of the war. This week, President Bush will meet with a group of international leaders, and Iraq will be the major topic on their agenda. While Washington vowed to help return the stolen Iraqi antiquities, an Iraqi oil official announced a plan to export oil in 1 week. More details in the following report.
شؤون البيت العراقي الواقع في القبضة الأمريكية.
Now that the White House has control over all Iraqi matters, Washington manages Iraq in ways that only serves its own interests. By mid-May, General J. Garner anticipates the establishment of a temporary Iraqi government. The occupation forces have already experimented with organizing the first city elections in Al-Mosul with the objective of forming a temporary city council. Washington is seriously considering a project to govern Iraq that would divide it into 4 areas, all of which will be under one American command. A senior Polish official declared that Poland has accepted the United States' offer to administrate one of those 4 areas, and said that a team of 7,000 men will supervise the assigned area for 1 year. Poland suggested involving other countries like Germany and Holland in following peacekeeping forces in Iraq. While working to establish security in Iraq, Washington continues to control the oil. American political analysts and oil experts say that the resumption of exporting Iraqi oil is not going to happen soon, despite appointing Samer Ghadam as the head of the Iraqi oil ministry. Furthermore, oil experts in the United Nations say that uncertainty may delay exporting oil at least 1 more month, while others are saying that the delay could be as long as 3 months. The United Nations has the authority to monitor Iraqi oil exports until August 3rd, when the Oil for Food program ends. This week, the United States is expected to introduce a resolution to end sanctions against Iraq, thus ending the United Nations authority to monitor Iraqi oil exports. However, Russia and other Security Council members want to maintain the Iraqi oil exports under the United Nations control. Moreover, the United States controls the Iraqi Health Institution. In another sign of United States control, the American Agency for International Development made the announcement that ABT Associates was given a $10 million contract to reorganize the Iraqi medical institution. Iraqi history and antiquities are not in better shape. The invasion of Iraq caused a lot of destruction and loss of many Iraqi antiquities. It appears that Washington intends to introduce a new resolution to the United Nations Security Council that would demand all countries to watch for stolen Iraqi antiquities and return any found item. The resolution will also demand that countries stop the entry of any of these stolen items. Though the United States seems to allow the United Nations to have a role in such a matter, that is not the case when considering the international demands for the return of the United Nations weapon inspectors. A senior American official said Washington does not see the need for the United Nations to search for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, at least in the short run. Of course, this American position will anger the International Atomic Energy Agency, whose president, Mohammed al-Baradei, already demanded the United Nations to send a team to Iraq to investigate reports about the wide-scale looting that took place in Iraqi nuclear facilities.
hoping to increase its oil production within a 3-week period to 1.5 million barrels per day. Since the war, the country, which has the second largest oil reserves in the world, is having to import liquid petroleum gas and gasoline to meet basic domestic needs. One of Iraq's 3 main refineries in Baghdad has been producing only 180,000 barrels per day, a third of its pre-war rate. The 2 other main refineries, Beji and Basra, are running at 60,000 barrels per day. Meanwhile, a European Union humanitarian aid flight with a 19-ton cargo of medicine funded by the European Commission arrived in the Iraqi capital. Also in Iraq, a team of local men led by an Italian are continuing with the lengthy task of destroying landmines and other unexploded ordnance close to a former Iraqi front line. The group, part of the Mines Advisory Group, was operating a minefield south of Erbil, painstakingly searching out the mines with metal detectors and then making them safe. Saudi Arabia has offered a reward of up to $80,000 for information leading to the capture of 19 men wanted on terrorism charges. The newspaper Riyadh said Interior Minister Prince Naif bin Abdulaziz announced the award plus more cash if the information helped the investigation. Yesterday, Saudi police said they were hunting 17 Saudis, 1 Yemeni and 1 Iraqi, with Canadian and Kuwaiti passports to face terrorism charges. They said the suspects fled after a shootout with security forces in the capital, Riyadh. Saudi television showed a large cache of arms and explosives, apparently seized from the men's hideout in the capital. Riyadh quoted the prince as saying security had been tightened at Saudi borders to prevent the men from fleeing the country, and said he urged them to give themselves up. Still in other news and international news, a U.S. envoy has said he sees the beginning of a dialogue emerging between India and Pakistan and is cautiously optimistic about the process. Deputy Secretary of State Richard Armitage told a news conference after talks with Pakistani President Pervez Musharraf that he was encouraged by exchanges between the Indian and Pakistani prime ministers, the first high-level contacts in more than a year. Armitage, who also held talks with Prime Minister Zafarullah Khan Jamali and Foreign Minister, said is to head to Afghanistan and then India on Friday. Later, Indian Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee rejected a suggestion by Pakistan that both countries give up nuclear weapons, saying India's security concerns were not limited to Pakistan. Pakistan said this week that it would eliminate nuclear weapons if India did the same. Meanwhile, violence continued in disputed Kashmir as Indian forces killed 5 Muslim fighters in a shootout overnight in the district of Budgam in the western part of Jammu and Kashmir. An Indian soldier was also killed in the fighting.
Mosaic is made possible by a grant from the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, which promotes journalism excellence worldwide and invests in the vitality of 26 U.S. communities, and the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation,